What about the involvement of the owner slash manager? What sort of involvement do you think would be a good idea, and what often happens?
Often the owners and managers arrange for training and don't participate, and I think that's a missed opportunity. I understand they're busy, have a lot of things going on their plate, but I've observed over the years that when the owner participates in the training, a couple of those things I talked about happen. The owner knows what people were trained to do, so now observation and coaching becomes much more legitimate, right? Rather than just yelling at people when sales don't go up as a result of the training, you can coach so that sales do. So I think it's important for the owners to participate whenever they can, and I used to lobby pretty hard with folks that they need to participate. And participate is a word I'm using very intentionally. It's not sit in the back of the room and watch people and grade who's paying attention and who asked a stupid question. That's not participating. Participating is come up to the table. We're all part of the team here in this business. I'm going to join with you, and I'm going to learn a few things too. And then my role is coach and mentor, and if necessary, make a few corrections along the way because I know what you're trained to do.
It would seem like that would be pivotal. I mean, if you sit in the back of the room or don't even show up, you're saying, well, this isn't really important.
Yeah, it's important for you, I guess, but not important enough for me. But if you participate, it's a very clear leadership message. This is what we're going to do. How can you justify that when you have all these other responsibilities? Well, you've talked with the trainer in advance about results. Your audits have made sure it's the right training for your people, so you're confident it's going to be a good use of your time too.
You know, you had talked about training as it relates to margins and the bottom line. Do you think most retailers see that connection right off the bat?
No, because I think there have been a lot of times where they've had poor training over the years. Maybe it's that same PK training over and over and over again, or it wasn't delivered well. I once observed a trainer deliver a 2.5-hour long training program on a new rug line, and literally for 2.5 hours the trainer stood in front of a group of people and read in a monotone voice from a book the product description about the new product. That's not training. It's not going to have any impact. That training was not a good use of their time. So that happens too often, and I think all training is kind of tarred with that brush. That's why the questions of results, right training, really training, and reinforcement are a way to evaluate training before you invest in it. Pass those tests, you're not going to have that training experience. You're going to have a profitable training experience.
All training is not created equal.
No, absolutely not. This is nothing, nor are all products, nor are all businesses, nor are all salespeople or installers. Same is true of training.
So I guess coming in, a custom training approach would seem to be a great idea, but I could see there's probably resistance to that because they picture the guy reading out of the book having brought a dozen donuts with him.
For sure. Again, the 4 questions will help sort you through that, but you don't necessarily need to start with custom. Maybe you start with some of that other available training. Your business improves. Now you can fund the custom training to improve even further. So that might be a good way to go too. You may not want to start with custom. Depends on the size of your organization. And again, the confidence you have in the people that are going to provide the training.
Now you had mentioned surveying customers, surveying staff. Talk about that.
Sure. Depending on your customer base, your staff may or may not need, for example, design skills. Or your staff may or may not need to be able to measure well because you know your market has complex installation systems and you need to make sure your people do that well. Whatever your customer base is, that will help you define what skills your people need. If you're mounting a social media strategy, maybe you need some Twitter and Facebook skills on your staff that you may or may not have right now. Whatever it is, to serve the customer base, what skills are needed to have successful, profitable transactions. Then you develop that list and you look at your staff. Okay, Joe, Sally, Mary, and Hernandez, what skills do they have on my staff, and are there holes? You might even ask them, this is the training I think we need. What do you think about that? That's valid because if people say, yeah, I think I could use some training in measuring. I think I could use to get a little more familiar with Twitter and use that to generate some business. Whatever that skill is, if you can get them agreeing up front there's a need, you're over a major hurdle, which is, boss, why are you sending me the training? I know I'm going to miss that $40,000 job that's going to walk in the door today while I'm at training. Well, no, people now have confidence that the training is going to be a worthwhile investment of their time and will pay off in the long run. They're less worried about that. And those audits are a way to actually get people involved in helping you figure out what training is the highest priority training for your business.
It seems like just the hardest part is connecting the owner to the idea of training. I was going to say custom training, but any training, for that matter. It seems like there's a disconnect there. It seems like I kind of know I need it, but I don't want to do it, kind of a thing.
Sure. You know, if you were in the military and you were in charge of a bunch of paratroopers, you want to make sure they were trained on how to pack a parachute, right? Or if you were responsible for a bomb disposal squad, you'd want to make sure your people were trained. I mean, literally life and death. But training can be business life or death because it comes back to the skills of your people. If you're marketing a great experience through social media and your other media that you use, and the customer comes in the store and the place is a mess, and your staff treats them rudely, and you know, there's a disconnect, it's not going to lead to profitable sales. So you have to make sure everything you do is connected, the skills and the in-store experience for the customers, as well as your marketing and the expectations it creates. Training can help you make sure that's all aligned.
Mm-hmm. Somebody's listening to this, say, wow, I really like this idea. I can see where we have this need. Where do they start? How do you take step one in a project like this?
Well, step one, I think, is to check with your vendors, the people you have good business relationships with, and see what's available. Because as I mentioned, there's award-winning training generally available out there. You may also want to look at BizLibrary or lynda.com and see if that might meet your need. But then you start thinking about custom training. If you're interested in custom training and going even further and improving your competitive advantage in your marketplace, good places to look are the list of speakers at events like the International Surface event. Here we've been using that term to describe it, or Surface is the historical name for it. Or you search online and you find people who are skilled in that area. But generally the list of speakers from those industry events will give you a great starting point. And you can see the kinds of topics people are talking about. Is that an area where I think I need training? I better contact that person and go on from there.
It would seem like the audit is a good idea. I mean, it would seem like sometimes we're so close, we don't know, in essence, what we do need. In fact, we almost resist some of the greatest needs.
Yeah, and the audit isn't necessarily easy. It takes a little discipline, a little bit of rigor. But many times, people who are staffing their business, and as their business grows, adding staff, add people just like themselves, because they were successful, they're comfortable with that sort of person, and so that's how we're going to staff, and that's how we're going to sell. But that may be a very narrow view of the marketplace. Maybe that sort of personality works well with half the marketplace. What about the other half? Conducting the audits will let you know what additional skills you need. Auditing your staff will let you know who has those skills, or do you need to hire them, or are you going to train to them? And then you get into the training program evaluation of your options.
I imagine you've seen some success stories come into somebody who was maybe apprehensive about getting involved with training in the first place, and then the end results were very, very good. Have you seen instances like that?
One instantly jumps to mind. I did a training program once, and in the room was a 40-year flooring sales veteran. This guy was really good. You don't last on a commission job that long unless you're really good. He didn't want to be in the training program. At the end of the training program, he walked out kind of in a huff, but he didn't have anything to say. We went back to his store afterwards because I wanted to observe what people were doing in the store. And a customer walks in. It was this guy's turn to serve the customer. So as he's walking by me to greet the customer, he whispers out of the side of his mouth, he says, "What the heck, I'll give it a try." And he was referencing some of the techniques we talked about. 15 minutes later, he comes running up to me. He says, "I can't believe it. It worked. It was fabulous. She's writing me a check. She didn't even ask how much the total job was going to be." And I'm not exaggerating. Right? And it was going to be something like a $30,000 job. He said, she didn't really quibble about price. She was delighted, and wow, this stuff really works. That one comes to mind right away. Not every time does that happen, but it can. And that's the impact of quality training. This time around, what we had was an industry veteran who had a great set of skills, but some holes. And what we did is we filled in the holes. And those are some of my favorite people to train because they know what to do with the new skills and the new information to add them to what they're already doing. I love training two kinds of people, people with experience and people without it, because they both have things they can learn to do even better.